Hello everyone, my name is Ben Scorpion and welcome back to another This Week in Destiny update. Now, very briefly, just because we had an update that coincided with the TWID going out that happened not long before the article came out, let's go ahead and go through it really quick. So, some issues fixed. Fix an issue allowing for exploitations of spawns and rift. Fix an issue where you can weaken other guardians when using Rapid Fire Ranger artifact perk is active. Yeah, I guess artifact mods aren't available in Crucible or something. Seasonal. Fix an issue where Arc Attunement runes could be destroyed with certain weapons. For Crota's End, improved the Essence of Oversoul drop rates for full clears and repeated clears, so Oversoul is easier to acquire. Altars of Summoning fixed an issue where the Void Crystal encounter would not progress if the crystals were destroyed so quickly during the third phase. For gameplay and investment, and abilities fixed an issue where players could activate their glaive while in Weave Walk, so hopefully Weave Walk is going to be enabled in Trials again. For armor, fix an issue where changing a mod on an equipped item during an equipment locked activity could boot you from the activity, where the damage resistance from Elemental Embrace was applying damage done in PvP, where Jolt from the Arc Elemental Orbs was applying to in-game objects, and where Secant Filaments were granting Overload Anti-Champion to weapons that already had Anti-Champion intrinsically. Then for weapons and accessories, fix an issue where changing a mod on an equipped item during an equipment lock activity could boot you. Fix an issue where Huska the Pit and Eidolon Ally would be missing their fire sound effects on console platforms. Added the Wendigo and Hung Jury Scout Rifle to legacy options in the focusing. And for power and progression, fix an issue where the minor Arcana empowered rewards didn't function as intended. Opening Season of the Wish chest while using a Witch's Key at the end of Legendary Sabbath Inspire will not properly give a deep sight weapon if there are any remaining to find. Otherwise, it will give high stat seasonal piece of class appropriate armor. And lastly, fix an issue with the Bullbug Terang emblem, which didn't appear in-game and couldn't be equipped. Then going into the main TWAB itself, as usual, going forward. Topics for this week is Jumpmaster Campaign has landed, crafting shenanigans, and some details on that. Deterministic Recoil, Treasure Vault, Thorn Catalyst, then stuff for Final Shape, including the Pale Hearts, the team, Too Much Fun with New Supers, Lo-Fi, Prime Gaming, and then everything else going forward. So if you don't know, Bungie usually has a bunch of foundations and things and emotes. They have a habit of releasing emotes that when you purchase them, they're limited time emotes that all the proceeds go to a specific fundraiser. For this time, it is the Jumpmaster emote with the Team Rubicon fundraiser. And if you wanted the full film, there is the blog post you can refer to. And here is an emblem that you will get after watching the thing to cover Team Rubicon. And then the crafting. Basically, if you wanted details on what happened for everything with the crafting glitch that happened over the weekend, there is something covering it. But other than supporting content changes, there are other limits that are going into for live updates and everything else. So due to limitation number 1, we needed to constrain the size of the limits. However, the scope of the problem was vast. All crafted perks were potential problems, as well as every crafted weapon. We obviously did not want to disable every weapon in the game, so we decided on 2 options: disable crafting or enhanced weapons, or disable perks from being active on crafted or enhanced weapons. Now, after a variety of issues, they started the first test option, disabled the weapons, but quickly ran into issues. First, weapons that were equipped appeared to be disabled in the UI, but had behaviors that were still active. We didn't have time to test whether leaving those behaviors active was safe or not, and there was an unequip functionality that exists for items, which we have attempted to use, but simply did not work, fixing the issue there. While disabling weapons not being a viable path, we began investigating second options, disabling the perks themselves. As sure as you know, a bunch of variety of crafted gear has already had their perks disabled, and at this point they need to start from scratch. To avoid the UI failure, we would simply not modify any existing visibility settings on the perks. Since we know too much exceeded the limits, we are running out of time for new attempts. We targeted far more conservation scope of what this would fix. And other issues with this approach, the main problem with that, we've had example of bad combinations of perks. We did not know all of them. We did not have time to gather more information. We knew we would miss some. And we also know that it is disabled the most popular perk combinations. The player would simply move on to other combos. We agreed that this was an acceptable risk, but not a permanent fix. And for the code fix, they broke it down into 4 major parts. Stop the exploit, determine how to see through all the crafted weapons our players have made and separate them from infected weapons by the rest. Determine a good state to move irregularly crafted weapons to, so that the player is left with a valid crafted weapon, basically so that everything glitched is destroyed, but we keep everything normal. And 5 ways to validate these fix-ups made sense on many combinations of weapons that are out there, and we didn't erroneously modify any other weapons. Now, this is a large detail. Of course, I went over the broad spectrum things for some reasons of why the fix is taking so long and why there's so much. If you would like to read the full article, there's a lot more details you can read yourself. And then, deterministic recoil. What does it mean and how is it changing? Basically, starting in Season 22, all following weapons with a Season 22 or later watermark what we're calling a deterministic recoil setups, including autos, pulses, scouts, submachine guns, sidearms, hand cannons, strafe rifles, and machine gun. This includes all full auto weapons as well as burst fire and semi-automatic primer weapons. These weapons have a recoil in a predictable way with sustained fire, allowing people to learn the patterns and compensate for them. You may have seen similar systems in one game, but our implementation is quite differently because we've released so many weapons from a season and drive their gameplay via stats, importantly in this case recoil direction and stability. The goal of the system is to make each weapon feel unique, with a recoil pattern that can be learned to a degree. This will enable players to truly master weapons in a way that wasn't possible with the standard Destiny 2 recoil system, which has a fair amount of randomness to it. To note, the pattern of the updated recoil is very similar each time, but not exactly the same. Here's how it works. A weapon is set up with a few possible recoil patterns. The weapon will always start with the first pattern most of the time. It will run through its recoil pattern until you stop firing for long enough to let the weapon's recoil and accuracy reset completely. Occasionally, somewhere in the first half of the magazine, it will switch to another pattern. Each bullet fired has a small amount of randomness to it due to an accuracy cone, aka the error angle, placing the bullet somewhere in the radius along the target point. The entire pattern shift left and right depending on the weapon's recoil, with higher recoil direction having smaller horizontal spacing, but even as a new recoil direction set changes, the pattern will be recognizable. Now this will be a demo of what it would look like, and pardon, there's going to be some loud volume off the bat. Or not. But this is an idea of what some of the recoil patterns we shall see will be. And it's pretty solid, and it's kind of, best way to describe is, how do I put this? If you fired the weapon, it would bounce left and right, and if the barrel bounced to the left, it wouldn't bounce and then immediately go back to the middle. There would be an element of randomness to it as to where every shot will land in the next one. It's something more realistic when it comes to firing weapons of higher calibers and everything else. So that is a recoil demo. As you would see, the video shows Abyss Defiant with 86 recoil direction and 25 stability, firing with no hand on the trigger to adjust for recoil. Now, why isn't everything else getting the treatment? Basically, different weird things. Does the recoil pattern only a reset on a full magazine? No, it basically just stops whenever you hold the trigger. It's basically the same thing with hip firing. If you've ever noticed with hip fire, how the reticle expands and then taking a breath will contract it back to normal, and you'll have some brief accuracy before it goes spray and pray. Think of that just widely now. What happens if I keep refilling my magazine while continuously firing? The implementation we've used has no upper limit to the length of the recoil pattern. For instance, firing an auto rifle will add to more rig, or another magazine refill minute won't cause any weirdness. So there is a limit. Granted, the idea is for everything, the longer you fire, the less accuracy you'll have, just because that's how logic works, but then at the same time, everything else goes forward. There's that. Like I said, there's a lot more details, everything going forward. In case you want to read some more details, I'm just giving you the 411 on the patterns. Now, curiosity killed the cat. What about the Guardian? We've been exploring the Spire so much you discovered its deepest secrets. The mystical Arcana chambers where Savathun turned trickery into power. You're free to explore. Try not to be a victim of your own curiosity. Pay extra attention when you're making through Season of the Witch starting this week. Guardians, some surprises are still waiting uncovered, and not all are easy to spot. Now, it sounds like Thorn is getting a catalyst come this Festival of Lost. And the perks are as follows. Gains bonus range and stability, dealing final blow or absorbing remnant grants additional weapon range, as well as increased mobility and handling for a short time frame. Not gonna lie, that sounds very Crucible focused. I know Thorn's always been a more Crucible focused hand cannon in general, but at the same time that sounds very underwhelming outside of anything but Crucible. But on that note, moving on. Thorn is arguably one of the most iconic hand cannons, so it makes sense this bad boy is up for some catalyst action next season. Oh, that will be next season. It's not Festival of Lost. Halloween Candy kind of gave me the idea of that. And then, in case you wanted to see the Pale Heart preview, there is a trailer for that in case you want to get a scene on that. And as well, they give a few trailers for the new supers, how they run, how they work, and some details into that in case you wanted to go a little bit more in depth with some of the new super abilities coming to Destiny. And as well, with everything, they actually added well, let's just straight up call it lo-fi Destiny beats. But some of it is modified Destiny soundtracks, but at the same, most of it. Some of it is just calmer music from the Destiny verse in case you want to see it. And then let's see, what more about Eris? Let's see. Okay, I guess this is behind the scenes on how they're kind of animating Eris nowadays. That's funny and everything. But then going forward, of course, there is always mocap to be taken into consideration, so there's some cool behind the scenes to look at for everything else. And then lastly, wrapping a few things up, Prime Gaming, there is some more stuff available for Prime Gaming. Some of it unique, some of it very old at this point. And Yeet the... Okay, I guess we just gotta watch this. What is Yeet the Smallin? Okay, this scene... Okay, I think this is some people having some server trickery and experimenting with stuff available, because clearly they're back on the Leviathan, which I guess this is... how is this gonna go? Okay, you're either holding the Smallin, or are you eating the Smallin? What's gonna happen here? I'm assuming they're just using elemental orbs and replace it. Yep, that was an elemental orb that just Smallin for us. Then, of course, the player support port. Igneous Hammer and Javelin 4 returns. Due to the effect of the weapon crafting issue, basically, people are getting a second chance to earn Igneous Hammer the proper way in case they couldn't just because of all of the glitchiness. And then the delay for Master Crota's End. As a delay for the intended Tuesday launch, the Master Crota's End raid is now available with the release of update. Oh, it's actually here now. So, Essence of Oversoul, of course, increased rate as we talked earlier, and players who encounter issues in this mode should report them to the help forum. And then more on the 48-hour challenge mode emblem. We are working to ensure players who completed Crota's End challenge mode with the contest mode are now properly credited with the All-for-One Triumph and associated emblem. Additional updates will be provided when available. For information on this issue and the steps being taken to resolve it, see the last week's player support report. And for some known issues, Path of the Burning Steps Titan Exotic and associated ornaments no longer change appearance when the Solar Weapon Surge is active. Hoarfrost Z and Icefall Mantle Titan Exotics are using incorrect cooldowns. When inspecting weapon details from items stored in players' vaults, the weapon perk icons may no longer appear. The Rank 71 Weapon Scrounger seasonal bonus requires ownership of the Season Pass, even if players already own the Season Pass. Players who did not fully complete the Season of the Deep story missions may be blocked from completing the current Season of the Week, or Season of the Witch weekly story until they finish the previous season story, which makes sense. You have to get into old seasonal area, kind of. So just do it. Returning players did not fully complete a Guardian Rises intro quest prior to the launch of Lightfall have been unable to attain the Learning Light quest. In multiple pieces of armor can cause obstructions when aiming down sights with Tessellation Exotic Fusion Rifle. Now, they didn't mention anything about Pyrogale gauntlets being re-enabled anywhere. They did say it was supposed to be back by the 19th, but I know I looked at it not too long ago and they were still disabled. So, with all the art and the possible leaf blowers you've been hearing in the background, apologies, the window is open. But from that is pretty much everything in the TWID. It's mostly good news, but it's mostly sandbox news and a lot of stuff that can be kind of glossed through if you're looking for purely game details. Aside from that, if you want some details regarding the mishaps of this weekend, this is the TWID for you. My name is Matt Scorpion, and I will see you in the next video.